Hello there. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of the Apartment Academy, the multifamily industry's only operations-focused podcast and your Institute of Higher NOI. I'm your host, the Dean of the Apartment Academy, Daniel Cunningham. And today, our guest lecturer is Jeff Morrison, who is Vice President of Aquana. Aquana is one of a number of providers of a growing field of water intrusion detection monitoring devices, but there is something different about the Aquana product in its level of control and insights that I think makes them a strong leader in the category. And so if you've been interested in learning about whether or not it's time for your property to migrate into the world of IoT connected devices with respect to water monitoring, this is a great episode for you. Here's Professor Morrison. Hello, Professor Morrison. Welcome here to the Lecture Hall 101 at the Apartment Academy. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Jeff, let's just start off by talking a little bit about, well, first of all, you are Vice President of Aquana. Give us 15 seconds about, because we'll talk more, but 15 seconds real quick. What is Aquana? What does Aquana do?
We are a comprehensive full-stack water IoT platform. IoT meaning Internet of Things. We're leveraging technology to enable property owners and managers to have full real-time visibility into their water consumption, all the way down to the unit level, but also control and providing automated water control and asset protection if there are leaks detected or if there's pipe burst scenarios. What makes us truly unique is that we've adopted sub-metering, which the industry has done since the 90s, simply for billing purposes, taking a sub-meter. And we've actually invented or created and manufacture our own smart valve that is out of Houston, Texas. This is a very unique device. It's all-in-one sub-meter endpoint that communicates meter data up to the cloud in real time. But it also has firmware built into it. So this is not just a kind of a passive device. This has algorithms that are configurable by the property manager. And if it detects a certain level of water flow or maybe a pipe burst scenario, it will actually take action immediately and shut the water off to protect the property from a flood. So it's a truly comprehensive full stack water IoT platform.
Very interesting. Okay, well, we'll get more into that. But you had this is not your first gig in the multifamily industry. You're not even a water guy historically. So what brought you here to this company, this product?
Well, so the adoption of the smart apartment or the IoT Internet of Things technology came about just a few years ago, and owners and operators were rushing out to try to make their apartments smart. This technology has been around for a while. I come from a long history of sub-metering back in the day. Worked for NWP before RealPage acquired them. That was over 15 years ago. I started in the industry at one of the first ILSs, one of the first internet listing services called All Apartments with Mike. Yeah, and that was seeing a lot of technology, a lot of evolution in this industry for the past 25 years. And with IoT being a thing now, it gives us the ability to do things we wish we had back in 2007 when I started at NWP. We had meters out there that were doing their purpose for utility billing, for resident billing. But what the managers found missing was the ability for real-time data and real-time visibility into what was happening inside the unit. They would have to wait 30, 60 days to get the data from the billing company and get the bills out to the residents, or wait for their water bill to come from the municipality before they could see what was happening. Now with all of this technology, and we're running LoRaWAN technology, but you've got Z-Wave, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, you've got all these wireless communication protocols now that the multifamily industry has been adopting for various different smart apartment applications. Now we have the ability to provide a truly full stack, comprehensive property-wide water monitoring and protection platform.
let me start with let's go into the details about what all that means, and then we'll talk about. You were at Smart Rent for a while. You mentioned the discussion of. I liked how you phrased it. The operators are rushing to make their apartments smart. I'm not sure that's the adjective that I would use, that they were rushing to do that, because I feel like a large part of our population still has not done that, and probably will not anytime soon, despite it being a very good idea and despite it being the thing to do, clearly, especially in light of trying to facilitate remote leasing or hands out, that sort of thing. But that's a different show. But the technology behind these things is sometimes intimidating. Is part of what confuses people. So let's start there, because you've said a couple of things. You've got monitoring. You talked about control, and then there's a sub-metering that's sort of sprinkled into this that other device manufacturers, that at least in my experience, don't have. Let's start with the control first. So these devices, what do they do to control water usage?
Well, the control is all in the valve that we manufacture. So this smart valve that comes in various different sizes can be controlled remotely via mobile applications or web portal that we've developed. But this is connected to our cloud via LoRaWAN communication protocol to our gateway, and that's connected to the cloud. But we also have Bluetooth built into it, so if you're an on-site maintenance staff person, you want to bring out the Aquana mobile app, and you're within range, Bluetooth range, which is typically about 30 feet or so, you can turn the valve on or off, or even reduce flow. So this has 3 positions. That's what makes it unique, in that now we have true capabilities of shutting down vacant units where we couldn't before, or reducing flow to vacant unit, or even using the algorithm to say, look, we want to allow a certain amount of gallons, say 100 gallons, to be used for unit turns, and then we want the system to automatically shut the water off to the vacant unit until we need to turn it back on for the new resident that moves in. So control, you can't control something you can't see, or you don't have any visibility into, right? So the ability to have, the communication protocol that we use to get the data to the cloud, and every minute or every 15 minutes, that is the key, first of all, to see what's happening at my site, and then the ability to connect to a device like a smart valve to turn the water on or off or reduce flow is key. What the industry's been doing up until now, and these are the IoT providers that I work for, Smart Rent. Then I went to Stratus, and I was there until the RealPage acquisition. And we did some very innovative things in multifamily, namely for Mill Creek and Graystar and the others. But they've used a lot of these leak sensors. This is a rope sensor that's 3 feet in length. These are fantastic, but this isn't going to really give you the full asset protection you need, because oftentimes these can be overdone. They can be populated in units where you might get some false positive. This is great for a detection device, but without the control device, such as a smart valve, you're really kind of left without a complete solution to protect the property. Because if you have one of these in place and it goes off, then you have to scramble humans. You have to rely on humans' response to the alert that they get, and hoping that they can get to the site, hoping that they're there. They can get to the site and assess the situation, and then take any needed action to mitigate the damage. With a smart valve, you don't have to be there, obviously. If it detects a leak and you want the water to shut off, it'll automatically happen in seconds.
So these devices are installed between the sub-meter for each unit and the unit itself.
So you asked about how do we retrofit. If there's an existing meter in place, like this cams drop, or like any other kind of meter, we can use any meter on the market pretty much. We can come in. All we need is an extra 2.5 inches on the pipe. We screw the meter right in directly to the valve, and it's connected. We wire the actual meter to the valve itself, and there you go. So it's a very simple retrofit, especially if there's an existing meter in place in the unit. If there isn't, we need a total of 7.5 inches of lay length on the pipe, and that's usually before the hot water heater. So we're capturing total consumption per unit. Now, keep in mind though that as I speak to all of these different elements of our platform is very modular. So it can be the full stack solution, or some clients say, all I want is the leak sensors, and we'll be there to act if we get an alert. Others want just the smart valve for control. And then many want the full solution, which is going to get them the billing support they need for the resident billing purposes, as well as the full monitoring and asset protection that we're speaking of.
This can replace whatever sub-metering monitoring you have in place already. Yeah, but it doesn't need to. It could if they want to.
What we've designed inside the smart valve is an all-in-one device that has the AMI endpoint, which is typically a transmitter that might be like a Tahama Wireless or Next Century or Innovonics. We put that endpoint inside the valve, so you don't need that entire network of repeaters and throughout the property. This communicates wirelessly to our LoRa gateway on site. It's sending the meter data in any desired interval, 1 minute to 15 minutes to hourly. But within the valve itself, I mentioned the firmware that is really making it a smart device, which means it's got algorithms built in that when it's reading data from the meter, it's assessing what's going on. And in cases like, a pipe burst, we might get, 50 gallons in 15 minutes, we'll automatically turn the water off immediately to prevent any major damage to the property. But there's also constant flow situations. We've had properties where we'll read the meter every 15 minutes and we're detecting a gallon, right? So that's 4 gallons in an hour. The problem is we've seen this go on for hours and hours. They become days, which become weeks. And we send alerts out to the property saying you really need to check out this unit, hoping that they'll go in there and take a look. The last time this happened, it was a vendor that went into a vacant unit and left the faucet on. So it ran for a solid 7 days. Now, if the property wanted to, they could have shut the water off remotely to that unit. So there's so many interesting use cases beyond just the massive pipe burst events or flooding events. You've got your very small, low flow leak detection. We're constantly monitoring what's going on inside the pipes, in addition to catching any water that might spill out onto the floor.
So we know that water events constitute in fact, the largest share of insurance claims, insurance losses. When Houston had its freeze a couple of years ago, all those pipes burst. It was for many insurance companies the largest claim they ever had, and it was devastating. Seems like this sort of thing should be a no-brainer. Your device, another device, something that's monitoring water use, something that can automatically shut off. Well, I guess again, I'm mixing two concepts, and I really want to stay clear on this because I think the control piece, separate than the monitoring piece, is worthy of discussions. But let's just start with the monitoring piece. Why don't we see a wider deployment of water monitoring devices? What's the holdup?
I think there's just been a reluctancy to spend the money, frankly. I think a lot of leak events don't get reported, and I think there might be a lack of visibility and transparency within the organization that's owning and operating these properties. There's also a motive of whether or not they're going to own the asset for a length of time where they can recover they have an ROI. We're seeing a 100% ROI in 2 years or less. 2 years or less. When you're combining the ability to bill back for residents and then you're preventing these incidents, we're seeing an average of 2% of every property is going to experience some kind of leak event, and to the tune of $17,000 to $20,000 per event. So they're not always the multi-million dollar occurrences where the entire property it needs to be evacuated. These are small, like death through a thousand cuts kind of scenarios, where you get these small leaks. Maybe it's leaking hot water heaters, or there's pinhole leaks behind walls, or there's plumbing failures, or you've got your bigger situations where an appliance breaks, right? Or a pipe to an appliance breaks. That's been known to flood entire units and then floors beneath them. So what we're doing now is we're really capable of giving the property owner the ability to see these things and have a true smart device in there protecting the property. So I think to answer your question, it's really education. I love shows I love podcasts like this where we can get in front of clients where we may be challenged to reach out to. Otherwise, you know how hard it is to get people to answer emails and phones, right? So, it's really it's going to take some time to get the message out. But I think once they see the ability to keep sub-metering for their billing purposes, but then take it up a notch, take it to the next level. We're partnering with billing companies. We're partnering with IoT platforms that want to adopt our platform. We have an API to get the data into the PMS systems. So there's a tremendous amount of potential that just wasn't there a few years ago.
Now, when you shared that ROI, that payback period of 2 years, you were including the benefit of being able to bill back to residents. That's got to be pervasive at this point. Most people are probably doing that through some form of fashion right now, right?
Yeah, that's a small component of the ROI is the ability to increase or improve your recovery. So in cases where they might be flat fee billing, or they're using an allocation method, they have to, and it depends on the jurisdiction of where they're located, but they have to, subtract common area deductions, right? So when you have a sub-meter and an accurate sub-meter, and you have our platform in place, you are going to see an increase in the utility cost recovery there too.
Okay, but that's not a significant piece of the 2-year payback, because I think what's more interesting to me is the notion that the ability to catch the small the faucets that are left on, the toilets that are running. I put aside the pipe bursting issues because those are catastrophic events that may never hit your property. Just those small catches are significant enough that you can have a 2-year payback on the cost of these devices.
Yeah, we are factoring in, like I said, the average leak event is about $17,000 per occurrence. And we were using a very conservative number of 2% of the entire asset. So 200 units, you got 4 units a year, but that really adds up. And then you've got the smaller stuff that just the maintenance kind of takes care of. We were at a site and the maintenance team told us they were constantly dealing with leaking hot water heaters, So pervasive line items like that may not go reported to, the ownership, or maybe just be kind of, accepted as kind of a cost of doing business, where I think we don't really have to live like that anymore,
I have seen on the Leonardo side, we have worked, part of the Leonardo value proposition is reducing risk on a number of fronts. And so we have been working, with a number of companies to talk about how we could incorporate the monitoring portion of what you're talking about into like the Leo dashboard, so that when there's an alert, like that makes it into the Leo dashboard. But I think what I've not really seen often, maybe ever, is the extensive control piece that you have. That not only, because it's one thing to have the alert, and you said, look, you get the alert, at least that's something. Somebody, you can dispatch somebody to go take their wrench and turn the valve. There is there's a delay there, presuming you have somebody on site that they can go out and do all that stuff. I'm giving your pitch for you here, I feel. But what's special about the control part? Why is that hard? Why is that unusual? Why is that better with your device than what else is on the market?
Yeah, as I mentioned, with our built-in firmware, what we call on-valve algorithms that are built in and configurable on the fly. So per unit, a manager can say, this unit's in vacant status. So like I said before, well, I only want a certain amount of water to be able to be consumed by vendors that are turning the unit or maintenance staff. And then I want to shut the water off and completely to that unit until I get a new resident moving in. Those are just some of the use cases. The ability to use the device as not as a passive device, but actually as an actual smart device is key. And then we have three settings. I mentioned the on off, and as well as I mentioned the reduced flow position of the valve. So there's abilities to conserve, there's abilities to shut off entirely, and then there's abilities to turn back on when needed.
Okay. All right. Got it. So going back to the idea of risk, we're talking about reducing risks through, and getting the ROI from eliminating water leaks, or at least noticing water leaks and being able to react to that right away. Are there other areas that, a device like this can help reduce risk, cost, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. On the cost side, you mentioned earlier the running toilets problem, right? I had a partner, client friend of mine in California say that 60% of their water waste was going down the drain through the toilets, and they would get residents coming in with massive bills, and they had to make the resident happy, and they gave them a massive credit. So that adds up to be a very significant amount of money. But then on the risk side, we're starting to get interest from the developers during construction, because they'll finish a group of units. Plumbing goes in, and then the unit will be kind of sitting idle, and then they'll have water issues. And it never fails. It's either due to human negligence, someone leaves faucets running, or there could be vandalism, or they charge the pipe and the plumbing fails and they have a leak. They spring a leak, and when there's no one there, of course, it's not being occupied by a resident, so there's no one there to report it. So with our platform, not only GCs, but project managers, developers, and during lease up, property management staff would have the ability to monitor, control water in every single unit during that whole process to prevent massive property damage. I heard about a property in Denver that sprung a leak, and the entire stack was flooded, and that was right after they got TCO.
I've been on that side of the business too, and I've seen that happen. Do you mind? We talked broadly about ROI. Do you mind giving some idea of scope of cost to install something like this on a 200 unit property?
I could pull that up, but per unit, our valves run between $240 and $300 for the valve itself. A sub-meter, you can go down to as low as, say, $50 for a pulse meter, or you can choose one of these ultrasonics for more like $130 to $150. So that's a variable. Leak sensors are roughly $50 a piece. The network we need for the whole entire property, we only need one or two LoRa gateways, and those are placed strategically depending on the size of the property. We'll place those in the right spot for full coverage. LoRa stands for long range for a reason. It's developed for small packets of data to be communicated over large horizontal distances, up to say 15 miles theoretically. So if we do a 200 unit property at that cost of say around 400 to 500 a unit for the full stack solution, and we apply a 6% cap rate, and we're reducing all of those leak events, and we're providing accurate support for resident billing. We've analyzed a property increase of asset value by about $880,000. So there's true ROI and there's true asset valuation, just depending on the cap rate that you have.
Okay, so if that and that with coupled with a 2-year ROI payback period sounds really reasonable. What if you were interested to deploy a product like this at your property, have it installed. What's the process? How long does this take? Talk us a little about that.
Yeah, so like I said, if you have sub-meters in place already because you're billing your residents for the sub-metered consumption, we can come in, assess the health of the meter system, and in most cases, use the existing meter that's there. We'll do a full site survey. We'll send our professionals out. We'll partner with the owner's plumber if they so desire. We can bring our own licensed plumbers in the area. And we do a full site survey, assessing any existing sub-metering systems that are there, getting the lay length, measuring the pipes, looking at the plumbing configuration for the site. Oftentimes, at a retrofit, the manager doesn't have plumbing configurations or plans, so we'll need to get some eyes on it. And then we come back and we design the system. Getting it installed, we've made it very simple, as I mentioned, with the female swivel that attaches directly to the meter. If there's an existing meter in, as I mentioned, we only need 2 inches of pipe length space to put in our valve. It can be hung in various different orientations. It can be upside down, it can be sideways, horizontal, vertical, does not matter. So we've made it pretty easy, and I would say an average installation would be less than, say, an hour per unit. And that's just, with all the variables that I just mentioned, we'll just have to get a site survey done.
All right, you knock it out in a couple of days, you'll be up and running. And then you have a separate, I imagine, you must have a platform, a software platform to monitor everything. Where's all that? What are all these devices? What do they talk to?
They're talking to 1 or 2 LoRa gateways right on the site. It's only the size of this box here. This is going to blanket the property with LoRaWAN coverage. What we do is we connect those first, then we power up the smart valves, and then we wait for just a few minutes, and the valves will find the gateway. They'll start checking into our cloud environment, our cloud instance. And once that happens, then the mobile app is convenient enough for us to just go around the property, connect via Bluetooth to the valves, and then we name them per unit, and then it's all done.
So Jeff, if people are interested in getting this system installed or getting a quote to find out what this would cost, how do they reach out to you?
Just go directly to me at jeff.morrison at Aquana, AQUANA.com.
Very good, Jeff. Really appreciate you coming on and educating us a bit about this, I think, important sector of the multifamily industry in terms of the maintenance side that people don't appreciate enough. I know it's innovating. Seems like all the time we're getting better at these kinds of devices. They do more. The fact that yours is communicating through Bluetooth and LoRaWAN and you've this real-time accessibility to shut things off is a godsend for a lot of operators, I think. So thanks for coming on, Professor Morrison. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Daniel. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at this week's episode of the Apartment Academy podcast. The Apartment Academy is a production of Leonardo 24/7, the industry's leader in multifamily operations and maintenance software. At Apartment Academy, we realize the hard work that goes into property management and the stress that comes along with it. Leonardo 24/7 takes the guesswork out of your team's day-to-day by providing customized daily guidance on tasks that need to be done, guaranteeing consistent operations across your entire portfolio. To learn more, visit www.leonardo247.com today.